Levi, are you there?
Yes,
Yes,
hello, I'm
Levi.
here.
Welcome,
Hi,
brother. Welcome, brother.
thank you, thank you.
I'm very
How are you?
fine. I'm very fine. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
I was checking Facebook to tag you in, but it appears I don't have you on my Facebook account.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we need to
It's just
do
the
that.
same name, Levi H. Martin.
Sorry?
It's my name. I think I have my name display on the screen. Levi H. Martin. That's the name.
Yes, I get your name. Levi, welcome once again. This is the Call to Activism Africa.
Okay, thank you so much, Kato. How are you doing?
And we shall be live today with my co-host Lynda Tilley, who is based in South Africa.
Uh,
She has some
yeah.
issues with connectivity, but she'll be online very soon.
Okay, that's good.
So, Levi, with my team, including Dennis Bongo in Uganda, Kabako Brian in Kenya, and others in South Africa, welcome you once again on this platform.
Thank you so much for giving me this chance to join you guys. It's
Yes,
amazing to be here.
yes, and I would like you to give us an introduction of who is Levi.
Okay, thank you. My name is Levi H. Martin, and I am a Liberian, and I am the Vice President of Humanist Liberia. I also quite recently served as the Africa Regional Coordinator for Young Humanist International. Um, and besides, yeah, I'm a social activist and I'm an entrepreneur as well. And I'm also a student at the African Leadership University.
Wow, that's impressive. You are doing
Thank
a
you.
lot of amazing work. Well done.
Thank you.
Now, Levi, as we kickstart this discussion today, we are handling South Africa. I mean, we are handling Liberia, and you are the one to take us there. We are going to get to know more about Liberia, but also more about humanism and your work as a human rights defender.
Okay.
Please let us know the key issues you would like us to handle today. You would like us to know what are the key issues you would like your audience to know as we kickstart this discussion today.
The key issues relative to human rights in general, or the key issues relative to human rights in Liberia?
Human rights in Liberia.
Oh, okay. There are a couple of things in Liberia when it comes to human rights that we have to be able to analyze and take very seriously. Some of those issues have to do with the issue of rape, domestic violence, violence against minority groups. Those are like the very key issues that we need to consider when it comes to human rights in Liberia.
Very, very important issues to raise. Of course, taking you back to your own history, your country has people that came from the US and we are settled there. And I understand you are part of that lineage, that ancestry of the people who came to that country seeking for liberty, freedom, and equality. So, in light of that, we would expect Liberians to be free people.
That basically, I mean, to some degree, Liberia has some relatively liberal practices, but it's still not sufficient. When you compare Liberia to other African countries at the moment, human rights issue is key. Though we are kind of liberal at to some level, we can be lenient on some things, but we are not we are not as compared to the US as people might think. We're still an African nation that is actually deeply rooted within the issue of culture and tradition and those beliefs of religion. So Liberia is not as free as anybody will think when it comes to human rights. There are more that needs to be done when it comes to human rights in Liberia. There has been some gains over over some time, maybe because of the war. So people have been like, okay, we can be lenient a bit, but it's not sufficient.
I understand. Now, talking about the your people coming to Liberia, there was an issue of land allocation. Were they all given land, or some got and others were left out? How is land distributed in Liberia today?
Land issue has a bit of historicity in Liberia. When Liberia was funded, the land was allocated to settlers and indigenous people who agreed to adopt some kind of Western customs and practices. However, that did not actually work as it was intended. So there's still been some dispute when it comes to land ownership and usage in Liberia. That's a serious thing. That has also led to conflict in our country. And to this date, the establishment of the land commission and other laws that has been passed to be able to take care of land dispute and land issues are still being challenged because we have a serious problem with our judiciary system. The judicial system is understaffed and is actually filled with it's understaffed and it's under resourced. So those things are like it still give problem. So if you look at other cases like rape and domestic violence and stuff, they're being fought by a judicial system that's overwhelmed. At the same time, you have land issue coming in. So the system is actually very overwhelmed. It has to be resourced with the qualified people with the right resources and logistics to be able to handle situations right and on time.
Wow, that's quite a milestone you have to achieve in Liberia. Now, I understand you're a humanist, of course, been a humanist leader for some many years. How did you lose your religion? I would expect almost everyone in Liberia to be religious, since you came from US as the background.
Let me say to you, the issue of religion is quite amazing in terms of how Africa actually acquire this faith-based system. A long line of my parents,
Welcome,
grandparents coming
Lynda.
up to my parents.
Hi,
Hi,
Levi. Hi, Levi. Hi.
hi.
How's my
A long
lighting?
line of yeah, a long
Comfortable.
line of my ancestors up to my parents are religious, like very religious. And even my grandfather, who I was named after, like I have a full name of him, was a very religious person who served in the Baptist church as a convention president. He was a preacher. He was a renowned preacher. Till to this date, even one of his sons is still a preacher. But then when it comes fast forward to me, I want to realize like I want to see this thing of rationality and sound reasoning and the support of science because it only gives me an evidence-based conclusion in terms of what I do as a person and what we do as a society. So with that, I actually came to the realization that my beliefs were based on faith and not evidence, and the science and reason was the one that provided me a better understanding of the world around me. So now, for that reason, I advocate for these values of humanism, and I strongly form part of the humanist movement in Liberia.
How has it been forming an organization there that is non-religious amid these very many religious people? What have been the challenges so far?
Sorry, I didn't get that. I think there's a feedback in the background. I didn't get the question.
Yes, I'll repeat that. I was asking for the challenges. Are there any challenges you have faced as a human leader in Liberia?
There are challenges. Honestly, there are a lot of challenges. Let's start first with the issue of moral emotional support. The issue of moral emotional support when it comes to saying or aligning yourself as a humanist. First of all, your parents are very shocked if you tell your parents like, "Oh, I'm no longer a religious person, and I now subscribe to humanism. These are my beliefs in X, Y, and Z." And then your parents would be the first people who would be shocked. So that means that your family, for any reason, are shocked. And then you come to your friends. So you cannot have a lot of conversations with people in terms of how you feel, what your beliefs are, how you no longer subscribe to the issue of religion, because then too many people think like the first thing you label is as an atheist, which of course being an atheist is not a bad thing, but I mean that's the very first thing they try to label you as. The second issue is like people who have non-religious beliefs struggle with the issue of support when it comes to social support and political support and a lot of other support, professional support, because being religious is like having a clique. It's like automatically once you are religious, it means it's assumed that you're a righteous person. So for that reason, everyone who claims to be religious and belong to a church or to a mosque will kind of embrace you. But if for any reason you are not religious, then it's a problem. So those challenges are very huge. You cannot get a lot of support. You cannot get a lot of support as a non-religious person as you get support as a religious person. For that reason, you see a lot of politicians now or in the past time have relied on the issue of they've relied on the issue of religion to be able to persuade votes. They go to churches during campaign time. They go to mosques and you see them to pray. And then, I mean, it's a fine thing for you to have faith if you think that's what you want to do, but you cannot use that as a means of picking out society because you know in the back end, you as a person, you have your own personal beliefs and own personal things that you do, but you cannot use religion as a tool to be able to mislead a whole group of people.
I get it. I'll hand you over to my host, Lynda. Lynda, back to you now.
Hi, Levi. Welcome. It's so good to see you and have you with us.
Hi, Lynda. Thanks. It's so good to be here with you for the amazing work you guys have been doing.
Thank you so much. And I know that you are one of our old faithfuls. You watch the show. I think you've probably watched most of the episodes, if not all, because we always see your comments and your feedback, which is fantastic. It's really great.
You're welcome. Yeah. You're
Super.
welcome.
So I'm sorry I'm a bit late. We had a huge storm starting here and my Wi-Fi was a little bit shaky. But no, it's great to have you here. So I'm sorry I missed the introduction, but I was backstage and I heard you just doing the intro there. And I was just saying Liberia is such an interesting country because I must say that all of us in the South and even in the West and East Africa, we never really think much about Liberia. It's almost as if you guys are on another continent, which is terrible. It's only when I started getting to know you, I think it was last year or the year before or last year, that I actually really started taking an interest in Liberia. And I wasn't even, you hear things, they glaze over a lot of things in history. And you sort of think, well, I knew that, but and then I read up more about it because Liberia was colonized by the Americans, wasn't it? Whereas on this side of, well, you're not that far away from us. It was the British and the French and that. So it's very strange for us in Africa to think that there is one of our countries was colonized by the Americans. And I remember when I first spoke to you, I was struck by your, what I think is very much an American English accent when you speak English. And you don't hear yourself as having that American twang. So, and it's like on this side of Africa, we've all got British accents, almost, they say, but that's from the British colonialism and the education system and everything. But it's really interesting to hear you speak. And it's something that always amazes me with my friends from around Africa, my black friends, is that whenever they're together or we're on a call like this, they all speak English to each other because no one understands each other's languages, which is so funny. So I'll have my Kato speaking in a British accent to my friend in Liberia with an American accent, and it's like, wow, guys, this is Africa. It's so strange. And I mean, your name, Levi, that's an American name, and your flag, and of course, I remember you explaining to me the way that, the side of the road that you drive on, and the way your parliament and your government and your schooling system, it's all very Americanized, and we don't think of that ever in Africa. And for those who don't know, it was the American Colonization Society. I just want to get my dates right here. It was in 1817. It's a very, very sad story because it was for freed slaves when slavery was abolished that they wanted to return to Africa. But this is what I never actually thought of this until I met Levi, is that the American Colonization Society, they actually bought a piece of African land. And I believe, I was just reading up a little bit more about that today, a lot of the land they took forcefully from tribes and along that area of the coast. And there were several people in one area first, and they were not welcoming because they were strangers. And then they settled into what is now Liberia, Liberty, American Liberty. And it really struck me when I first got to know Levi, because he said none of them know where they're from, because they are the descendants of freed slaves who were taken and born in America. And it was absolutely tragic how families were just split up in that. So I think Liberia, it's completely unique, because every single Liberian there today doesn't know which part of Africa they are actually from, their heritage, their name, their culture, and that is something that we just never think about. We've all got our issues here in Africa, and everyone's got all the land issues, and we've got this whole thing with there's people that can still remember what their great grandparents' African ancestral spiritual beliefs and everything, or align yourself to something that you know. But for you guys there, you could be from anywhere really, and you're on somebody else's, another tribe's land. And I mean, have you had issues with that? I just find it so fascinating. I love history, and it's just a part of African history which I really would like to learn more about, because I just feel for you guys, like you don't really know where your home is. It's a horrible feeling. It must be your roots.
Lynda, that's a very in-depth kind of concern, as I will put it. I still recall the very first time we had a conversation on WhatsApp. It was amazing for us to be able to share the bit and pieces of information that we have from both ends of the continent. For any reason, I think I would like to say this. The Liberia, before it became Liberia, at the time, there were people on that land. There were a lot of people on that land. Like, there were tribes on the land. The land that they now call Liberia today had people from the Dade and the Mendi and the Mandingos tribes, and those people were there.
Yes.
They were going about the normal trade. what happened is like we all understand like at that point in time in the 1800s, 1700s, and 1800s, Africa was not known as Africa, and people were just basically going about their normal businesses. When America decided to relocate free slaves, maybe because of the issues that they started to have in terms of threats, and people might just roam around the streets of the U.S. and could be competitive in the future and all of those stuff. For that reason, the American Colonization Society, the ACS, group of guys who came together was like, okay, I think we can find a way to take these people to somewhere that we have traded before. We've traded with a couple of these people who look like these people because this is where they came from. So at that point, what happened was they made a couple of trips, like any diplomatic arrangement. They made a couple of trips to the coast, which was known at the Madagascar coast at the time, because that was what it was basically known for in trade. And then they had some conversations. So some of the guys who were actually part of the free slave movement and had some stakes in terms of mobilization thought it wise to join hands with the Americans and parentheses the whites who were sponsoring this trip to come to where it was called Liberia at the time. I mean, it wasn't called Liberia at the time. So they moved up to the Providence Island. First, it was the Chevron Island, and they moved up to the Providence Island, where there were a couple of challenges. They actually purchased land. You see, in the time, I mean, when it comes to the term of ownership, where the capital city is, Montserrat, Monrovia itself on Cape Montserrat, that land up there was kind of purchased. It was legal. But then what happened was, if you come in my community and then you purchase a piece of land and you say you need maybe like 1 acre or 2 acres of land, and I give you 1 acre or 2 acres of land, and you only realize like, okay, we can stay here together since you have 300,000 acre more, and you have your people, we can come together and then we can form our own country. Because don't forget, the guys who came as free slaves came with the mentality that they have lived in a country that was developed, the US. So they thought that they could come, they thought that they could come to Africa and then they could start their own thing. But the thing is, when they started, initially when they started on their own. They started as just the settlers. The indigenous were not actually incorporated. They were just like the settlers. And when they started to incorporate the indigenous, we humans, things happen. That's why today I have to be able to say that I go with humanism, because you have to be able to think about rationality. You have to think about what benefits both sides of the discussion. But some of those things were not done. So because of those things that were not done, they were left unsettled, and they were only assumed that these people were just going to be part of us. And those things happened. And those were where the conflicts and stuff started to build up over time, because for a long period of time, it was only the settlers who were leading the country. So you told me that I should join you to be able to build a country. But now that the country is formed, you are leading this country for hundreds of years. You're not giving me a chance to be able to have a say. So when those different things started to come in play, that was when the disenfranchisement started to build up over time. And then when you realize, like around the late 70s to early 80s, that was when the bubble burst. And then we started to have civil conflicts.
Yes.
So
you've had a lot of that there.
Yeah.
And
so
it was all due to that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. And of course, the people that were resettled there, it's typical, so ignorant of like the Americans to think that just because these people looked like the freed slaves, they would all. But diet was different, climate was different. You're basically like a foreigner coming to Africa. And I believe that it still to this day has one of the highest number of death tolls on the continent, because people were just dying from things like malaria and that because they had no immunity to it. And it's a complete change of climate, temperature, vegetation, and different kinds of soils and crops and a whole different diet and everything. And all the tropical diseases and things which they had no immunity to. And I believe that there were many deaths. And like you say, they'd come from a developed country where even though they were slaves, they still had houses built and structure and routine and things, whereas this really was a part of Africa that had been, it wasn't a very developed area like further parts of West Africa were at the time. So it really was just totally different conditions for farming and everything. It's you don't think about the human aspect side of that, how it must have been for these people, and not speaking the language, not being able to communicate or trade because you couldn't speak the local languages. It's very much an outsider on your own soil, but it's so unfamiliar. I believe there were many who refused point blank. They said, we've been born in America, there's no ways we're going to Africa. And there were about 13,000 freed slaves that were returned by about, I think, 1867, but thousands and thousands of those died, which is tragic.
Yeah. I mean, Liberia has this thing of complexity when it comes to the issue of discrimination. It's so weird. It's so weird that most of the guys who actually came from the US were slaves, but then over time started to treat people on ground as slaves.
Oh, so that's the other thing.
That's like one of the most hypocritical thing to do to humanity. If you have experienced some level of difficulty and challenges in life, you should have a better understanding of what the difficulties are. And if you, for any reason, that's why when you get older as humans, as we get older, we are supposed to have a certain kind of experience to empathize with younger generation, because you've seen and know what those challenges are as a young person. So you coming from a place where you knew that these guys were slaves, and you shouldn't have that level of discrimination. And
exactly,
yes, of course, they were trying to adapt and everything else. When it came, there were sicknesses that took them apart. But I mean, in a better circumstance where there could have been a better level of collaboration, there could be a share of knowledge. A share of knowledge could exist in the instance where we tell you exactly what we have learned in the US, and you teach us exactly what you already know here. Because don't forget, the indigenous they may not have been on a full-time electricity and see cars and ships, but those people knew the herbs. They knew how to keep themselves safe. They knew how
they
to.
Could
they
read
knew
the
how
sky
to.
and
Yes, and everything else. They had their own level of civilization. So,
of course.
A better way of collaboration could have helped in the past, and it could have been a system that could have tried to reduce the level of casualty that we actually experience.
Sure. But it was the first time it had been done, and it was new to everybody. And if you think of it in a way, it's almost like the white colonizers that came and took over lands in Africa from black tribes, except it was black people taking over, like you say, and started treating the indigenous people like slaves, like they'd been treated, and obviously came with a different kind of knowledge, and like you say, different kinds of, I won't say advancement, but different knowledge on different levels. And instead of working together, it was So now, have there always been people in Liberia that were always there, the indigenous people, and then all the descendants of freed slaves? Do you work together nicely now, or is there still a bit of? Do you all live together there? I mean, like.
Yeah, in the modern Liberia is an amazing place. In terms of infrastructure development, we still have challenges, but in terms of culture and coexistence, it's becoming an amazing place. There has been intermarriages that I actually have a bit of a lineage from the Bassa tribe, because that was a tribe very close to the coast. And that was the one, like, those were like the group that actually dealt with the settlers at a very early stage. So there were intermarriages that play in those roles. Yes, there were intermarriages that play in those roles. And over time, after this long civil crisis, the best language that we spoke to each other was, we have to unite. It has to be an issue of unity amongst us.
Yes.
We can all have subdivisions in terms of the little groups that we come from, but we all stand together as Liberia and Liberians. So right now, that level of division is no longer a thing. Matter of fact, you have to be very careful when you speak of Liberians, and think that you have to be able to mention this issue of ethnicity, because people are definitely going to tell you that we don't care about it anymore. I mean, it's not a thing that we want to discuss.
That's good.
Politicians no longer go into that kind of conversation, because these are like the biggest trigger to these conflicts, politics.
Yeah, it's the same everywhere here.
Politicians used to come up and be like, we're from this side, why are these people treating us this way? And we are from that side, why are they treating us this way? So this time around, you don't play that in politics. You don't play that in a social conversation. You don't even play that in a joking manner, because nobody wants to listen to it. Everybody understands that we have one objective, and that one objective is to make Liberia a better place, so that we can be able to either pass our pre-war status and be able to catch up with a lot of other countries that are moving forward, because we have young people that are looking forward to us.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't know of any other African country here where people have just said, we don't even care, we're all just one people. That is really a testament to the Liberian people, really, that you just really accept that. Because really, at the end of the day, it's a thing. We're all, we're all genetically the same. I mean, it's just such a crazy thing, and it's the same as with tribalism. And a lot of people don't know. There's splits between the white communities as well. Like in South Africa, the English-speaking whites and the Afrikaans Boers from so there was a time also separate churches, separate schools, separate communities. You certainly don't intermarry. And then there's even further splits between whites, because like I was bottom class because I was born in what they termed a black country and grew up around black people. So I wouldn't have as much status here as an English-born person who had been born in South Africa, which was predominantly a white country. So there's even splits between our race, and it's everywhere, and it's just amazing, because that is talking about humanism in action. That is how we all want to be one day in all our countries, because we want to unite as a continent. We can't even unite our states or our provinces in each country and our tribes. There's so much infighting in every single country with the north and the south and everything. How on earth can we stand united as a continent when we're all fighting amongst ourselves and everyone's so split? So I think it's really amazing what you've achieved there.
Yeah, that up to today is like one of the biggest achievements we've had as a country. Though we're still fighting with infrastructure, we're still fighting with other issue of general human rights. We're still fighting with issue of security. But when it comes to the issue of tribalism, we've actually fought that. So it's there's no way I think right now any one person or one group of people can stand up and use that as a means of dividing the country. It's not possible right now.
That's wonderful. And as the years go by, it will probably be something that, well, it isn't forgotten from history, but it will be one of those things that, you know, maybe in 50 years' time, people will be like asking, oh, wow, did that happen? And not all look at other countries and wonder why they're so split when you're not, which is wonderful. And Levi, speaking of human rights, how is that going? Because we don't hear much. We don't hear much out of Liberia, or we don't see a lot in the press about stuff going on there with human rights like we do in other countries. But you guys are obviously also battling.
Issue of human rights for any reason in Liberia. Let's consider 2005. 2005 when former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected President of the Republic of Liberia. Human rights were part of the discussion for a new Liberia. Those things where we have to be able to talk about rape, we have to be able to talk about domestic violence, we have to be able to talk about better central prisons and stuff. There has been some gains, but they are not enough. They're actually not enough. Liberia in its post-war status should have a better human rights system. We still have the issue of rape victims that are like put on the sidelines from cases, and those cases are not being taken care of. We're talking about a huge number of people being put into central prisons and police cells and still experiencing police brutality in those cells, and they're being overcrowded and they're not being taken care of well. It's forsaking to go to a police station and see someone in a police cell waiting maybe for the time to be judged, and you see that the condition there is not okay. Mm-hmm. We talk about issue of minority groups. It's still a challenge in Liberia, although there's some level of labor practice that you might find, but the issue of religion also puts it aside to know that we are a religious country, so for any reason we shouldn't talk about these things. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do that. But people need to understand that when it comes to human rights, Liberia is not doing as much as it should. Liberia is like one of the oldest countries on the continent. We should lead by example. We should be a country that other people in the Mano River region, in West Africa, and even in entire Africa should call to the table to discuss better means of human rights. Because we should be the kind of people who that they should be able to look up to, like, what can we do? What kind of system have you used? What kind of strategy have you used to improve the human rights conditions? But those things are not being done as we should. So just a couple of times back then, we had few demonstrations of people talking to the president that there has to be something done about rape cases. There has to be something done about domestic violence. So we haven't done a lot. We need to do more. I believe in human rights because I believe, like, as a person, when you are sitting by yourself, your consciousness gives you the power to make changes in your society. But if you're not in a good condition, of human rights, you cannot function well. You cannot think about a better means of making your society better. So if an entire country is still facing huge challenges with human rights, it means that we still have huge number of people that are not in a good state of mind. They're having mental issues, they're having mental challenges, they're having physical challenges, and those things are not okay.
Going there a little bit, diving into the issue of minority rights. How are the LGBTI community faring in Liberia?
It's a really touchy issue when it comes to any African government and any African society to talk about minority groups. I, for one, I've never backed down from talking about how I feel that these people need to be treated. If you go to my social media pages, I argue back and forth with people like I don't care. I mean, if you think you have some rights that the next person need, they're on the right, but you think yours is better than theirs, then you're just making up a situation to put somebody in a discomfort and you be in the comfortable zone. Look, let's not get it wrong. You don't have to subscribe to what somebody is subscribing to. Their belief or their practice is theirs. But it doesn't mean once it does not bothers me as a person, it does not harm the rest of the society. It's just that person's own
Exactly.
practice or it's their own sexuality or whatever it is. Let's get it clear that they have the right to do that. And it's not just with when we speak of minority group, it's not just with the LGBT group, TPQ group. It's also with the issue of people who are saying that they're non-religious. Let's get another group of those people as well. Let's talk about the people who say they're traditionalists. You see, so for example, if I go into a gallery and just say like, "Oh, I'm a non-religious person," I start to get discriminated upon. Like people will be like, "Ah, come on from here, you're atheist, you're a devil worshiper." Like that's just the assumption that they put forth to you. They do it to
Sure.
every minority group. So in Liberia, when it comes to laws, it's still illegal for you to have same-sex marriages. It's still illegal for people to fully identify as what's the name
Right.
LGBTQ people. It's also not a thing in Liberia right now to have like a very circular state. Is the country is known as a Christian, quote unquote, Christian
Yes.
nation founded on Christian principles. So all of those things are like are at that stage right now where we don't have it as we should. But I do believe in the issue of I believe in the issue of the development of humanity, and I believe like there has to be a time where each person can have a freedom to what to believe and what to stand for.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And isn't it funny that you've managed to overcome your differences between the settlers and the original people on the land? You've been able to overcome something that none of our countries have been able to yet. But yet, the thing that still divides you is religion,
Yes,
which to me it just shows you how it catches people and how dangerous and devastating it is, because you can overcome these huge differences to do with what the whole continent is on their knees battling with, but yet you're still split with things with this religion. And like you say, it's the same here. If you say you're atheist, automatically they think devil worshipper, and you say, well, I don't believe in the devil either. And they also think sacrificing, that you do sacrificing and rituals and things. The ignorant people, they honestly do think that. And I often get, but you don't look like an atheist. They really, I'm like, what is an atheist supposed to look like? But it's just, I think it's something we were saying the other day, we need to really normalize it. I mean, I've got tattoos and that, so I kind of fit the thing because they see my tattoos and they're like, but I'm just saying is that I'm like, you don't look like an atheist. What is, I'm supposed to be dressed all in black with like dark black lipstick and sort of like blood running down my face or something. Like I think he's goth or something. But it's just so strange. And then they're like,
I tell
I've done work.
I tell
Carry
a lot
on.
of people that even the idea of satanism is not real. Like it's not a thing I want to discuss because it's a waste of time.
Exactly.
Don't waste my time on those kind of issues. We have to talk about scientific issues. The reason why we've been left behind in Africa is because a lot of countries in the West have been able to force themselves to discover new things, come up with new discoveries in scientific facts. And yes, the most intriguing thing about that, most of these scientific studies and practices actually derive from the same continent. It's just because we were actually brainwashed, and these people are trying to push forth
Of
with
course.
their agenda very faster than we are. And then it seems like we give you religion, we take science, we run with science, and you can sit with religion for a while. And until a lot of Africans can be able to understand that we need science, we need
We
critical
do.
thinking,
Yeah,
we need
We need it in our
rationality, we need
universities
to
and our
understand.
schools. We
Yes,
should be raising
it's a
children as well
graduate.
that have an interest in minerals and our mineral wealth and natural resources and that as well, and we're not.
It's a
indeed.
grassroots issue that we have to be able to fight against at the moment. Science
Definitely.
is
Do
needed
you
in
know
it.
what? Absolutely, and we are the cradle of mankind, and there's so much yet to be discovered about the origins. And I always think of the Karamoja and Turkana regions in East Africa, where they've discovered such amazing finds of old hominids and that going back hundreds of complete skulls and that. And then I think the group that was in there, that they were executed, and then since then they've had unrest because the people are going in there and getting people off their land because they can get the minerals. There's a lot of pirate mining going on, and there are old settlements from thousands, millions of years ago where they found layers and layers, like graveyards and that, of going right back to pre-history, any time we know of, but people can't get in there now to excavate. And I just thought, if we were a peaceful continent, can you imagine if we were all a continent of scientists and biologists, and how exciting it would be for us, anthropologists and archaeologists, and we were going out there every day, and instead of sitting on all our groups talking about politics and human rights, we were saying, look what we've just discovered in Zimbabwe, and that's what you guys find in Liberia, and comparing notes and getting excited. And we as Africans should be discovering our own history, and we should be the ones, but none of us even know how to figure out carbon dating or how to read a DNA report or anything, which is so sad because we are the one continent, the one place in the whole world that's got every single thing that every scientist in the world wants to examine and excavate. And we're all sitting here, probably on top of a whole lot of these historical sites, and we wouldn't even know what to look for. And we're like dumb. And we have to get people in from overseas to teach us how to do it, or their equipment. But we've got the skills and the brain power to do it ourselves. But how can we be a continent of scientists and archaeologists when we are battling just to put food on the table and get money at the end of the month to be able to send your kids to school for the following month? But that's the whole thing with being kept oppressed. You
No,
just working on it today and tomorrow and hand to mouth. You don't have a chance to look into the future and think, let's go and excavate, let's go and discover those old graveyards up in the mountains and see what's happening. And it's just so sad, that for me, that's quite sad.
yeah, talking about that, Lynda, and of course going back to Liberia more directly, I do understand that your president, George Weah, was a very glorious footballer, international footballer. And I would like to know, in terms of sports, how far has he supported his own country? I was able to see his son playing in the American team and was very
Yeah, it's
happy
one of the,
cheering them.
yeah.
And I was wondering why a president should be very happy not seeing his own country playing in the World Cup and cheering on a country he calls his own. So I do think that many Liberians see themselves as an extension of America. What do you think about that?
So I'll take the last one first. Not many Liberians see themselves as an extension of America. I would say I'm pretty sure if you ask every 100 Liberian, where do you want to go next month, they'll tell you, I want to go to the US. Maybe you're going to have one or two persons that are going to tell you something else. But they'll tell you, I want to go to the US. The US and Liberia has a very good tie in terms of historicity, because all of what we know and started was built upon from the US. Liberia's government and infrastructure are modeled after the American system. The government includes separate power between the executive, the legislature, the judiciary branch of government, with check and balances. But unlike the British colony, the model is different when it comes to governance.
Yes.
So I just wanted to set those basics first, in terms of how we think about things in Liberia. Our flag is modeled after the U.S. flag. Our anthem and is also modeled after the U.S. So when it comes to the issue of sports and President George Weah, first of all, he's one of the proudest thing. He's one of the proudest thing that we have to ourselves as a Liberian or as Liberians when it comes to the issue of soccer. Until today's date, we can proudly argue with any African that there's no other African has won the most prestigious soccer award, which is the Ballon d'Or. However, when it comes to the support of sports in Liberia, as a footballing president, I'll definitely say I personally thought I was going to see a lot when it comes to sports and then when it comes to soccer in particular. But that's not really what's happening in Liberia. Most of the people who are involved with sports are involved with sports based on their own zest. But again, we say thanks to the strive of George Weah during his prime, because he plays soccer and it means that a lot of young people thought like, okay, I could be like George Weah. But then with him being president and not giving that level of support to sports, I think there has to be a lot to be done with sports. When it comes to the issue about his son playing for the US, again, I'm a very liberal person. I believe in people's personal choices. His son has the right to choose because his son has a tie with Jamaica, with Liberia, and with the US. His mom is Jamaican, his dad is Liberian, he was born in the US. So I'll say for you that now in soccer, people look for certain opportunities to showcase their talents. Liberia hasn't qualified for the African Cup of Nations for years, since George Weah time, for years. And they haven't qualified for the World Cup either. So having a tie with the US, I think that's what gave Timothy Weah an opportunity to choose to play for the US, to say, okay, let me showcase my talent to the world. Which, of course, congratulations to him. He also scored like an opening goal in the US game. Wow. That was great. Yeah. However, if I can say to anybody, as a president of a nation, it's only a good thing to encourage your family members, to encourage people of your country to see some level of allegiance, to play for their country, to showcase the talents that they have for their country, no matter the circumstances and the challenges. You have to showcase these things. Me getting all of Liberia or other Liberians getting all of Liberia to go to school and stuff, it's all me trying to say, okay, since the education system is not good right now in Liberia, I'm going outside to get some level of education. But at the end of the day, whatever I want to do as an entrepreneur, I'm going to do it back into my country. Matter of fact, I'm here in Rwanda in school. I have a small business in Liberia that I'm pushing every day with my team. It's because I believe that we have to start it from there. There has to be some level of growth and improvement from where we come from. It's Absolutely. The same for Africa. It's the same for Africa. Africans are leaving the continent and going outside to other continents to give their talents and give their knowledge and wisdoms to other people's economy, to other people's security systems, to other people's infrastructure. It's the same. It's a brain drain continent we're running. We need to do better. We need to encourage people to come home and do these things. Yeah.
That's a very beautiful submission there, my friend. That's a very good one. Thank you. Now, what has George Weah done in terms of building sports infrastructure? Has he built any soccer academies, for example? as a footballer, champion of football in Africa at one point?
In terms of soccer academy, none that I know of personally that President Weah have built. However, there has been some gains by his government to build some mini sports stadiums in slum communities and some along the boulevard of the main street. The renovation of the Samuel Kanyando sports stadium, which is like our national sports stadium, which of course was also banned by FIFA in past time because it wasn't up to standard. That renovation had to be done. But in terms of soccer academy, I don't know of any that President we have done. However, President we have his government has made some gains in making few availability of some sport pitches around the country. I'm pretty sure President Weah, as a president, has his own challenges. He knows what he goes to talk about to people, but in all seriousness and understanding for what Liberia needs, being a footballing president, we could have had better. Like people to always talk about, oh, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf could have done better because she has certain level of connections. That's the same. I think like sometimes too. I think like George Weah could have done better when it comes to sports, especially soccer. He knows his challenges. He's going back for the presidency. He's running again. Maybe if he wins in his second term, maybe he's going to do something legendary that we don't know of.
And that's the problem of Africa, because George Weah has had 6 years of presidency. And people are going to look at the 6 years in office and ask questions. For example, in terms of human rights support, are there other achievements you can see that it has been doing this term that have been some scored goals in terms of human rights improvement?
Human rights improvement under President Weah. I speak on the basis of a humanist. As a humanist, that's not encouraging. As a humanist, I speak on the basics, like what human rights are supposed to be like. It's not encouraging on the President Weah. We still have tons of rape cases that are on the dockets of different courts. Our women have to be protected. Like, these are the people who are giving us reproduction. These are the people who are being our companions. These are the people who are strong partners in our development as a nation. You cannot keep them in a state of disbelief of their gender. I mean, there are other, they cannot be in a level of the fear and disbelief, like, oh, because I'm a woman, this is going to happen to me. And so the issue of rape has to be taken very seriously. I believe President Weah is a very liberal person. For the character that I know he has, should believe and understand how much it needs to be taken seriously when it comes to rape, when it comes to domestic violence as well. And then when it comes to the issue of violations of against common citizens, like government officials misbehaving, doing something out of the way because they're dealing with a common citizen or private citizen, not say common citizen, but private citizen, it's a problem that has to stop. Those are things that we need to be able to take very seriously. It has to stop. When it comes to anything else under the umbrella of human rights, Liberia is not scoring high marks. I wouldn't say we're scoring high marks, and we have to do better. Sometimes I try to present my country to my cohorts and schoolmates at the ALU, because we all come from different parts of Africa. I try to present us as this liberal country or liberal idealism that we have. But then when you think about the challenges of human rights in your own country, sometimes you take a backseat, you be like, this is really not worth me talking a lot about how liberal we are, because
It's
human
an
rights is a
imbalance.
very, yes, human rights is a very key pillar of liberalism.
I was
Yes, thank you
surprised
so
to
much.
hear how much gender-based violence there is. Sorry, Kato, in Liberia. I really was surprised when I was educating myself about your country that women are really targeted there. But which groups are doing this, or is rape just like an acceptable thing, or that everybody does? Are children obviously growing up thinking that it's normal? Like, it's so unusual for me to see so much rape happening constantly in a country. It's just quite strange. So where is it coming from?
Uh, there's the issue of impunity. Um, as we all know, when acts are created and people are not, especially ones that violate other people's right, and one is not punished for it or try and punish for it,
Sure.
um, there could be a repetition of the same crime, and
Yes.
that's basically why you might hear about rape and domestic violence in Liberia. We have made some strides when it comes to cultural practices. Um, a lot of people defend women and try to protect women, but then you see rural communities and other places where these things of traditional practices and people seeing women as subordinates are still in existence. Then when rape cases come up and they're taken to police stations, and the police are under resourced and they cannot expedite the process and take it to court, and then the court cannot expedite the process and give the victim a true trial and give them justice, then you realize, like, statistically, the the increase of that particular crime is just going to continue. Is just going to keep going up. And that's basically some of our issues. If you ask me right now in Liberia, I think the problem we have to be able to address is to address the issue of staffing our judiciary system with with qualified people and giving them the best resources that they need to be able to handle these cases very fast. Because if someone is
Sure.
tried for rape and they are found guilty, they should serve their time. They cannot be roaming around the street, because there's something about habits. We all develop habits. If you did one rape, if you raped somebody before and you haven't been punished for it for almost 4 or 5 years, I mean, or 4 or 5, 6 months, there's no expedient trial or so. In another time, you feel like you can go and commit another rape crime or another domestic violence
Mm,
crime, because there's nobody actually coming after you, and then it keeps going in circles. You see,
sure.
so the issue of impunity is really what's bothering our justice system, and when it comes to these things about human rights.
And
Interesting.
talking about impunity right there, I do think there's a challenge of unemployment in Liberia too. For instance, your country is well endowed with minerals such as rubber, which was one of the best export of Liberia for so many years. We talk about gold and diamonds. So I think you have these mines. What are the conditions of the workers in these mines, and who are the people in charge of these mines? Are there
Yes.
any rights that you think are being neglected in terms of the workers working in these mines?
Ha. Working conditions in the mines in Liberia varies, but there have been like reports for poor working conditions and labor rights violations so far. There are some. There are also like foreign companies operating in the mining industry, including the Chinese, who are
Mm,
also now forming part of this system and stuff. There are two sides of the coin when it comes to mining situations in Liberia. The side of the coin comes from the employer side. Employers are trying to keep safeguard the minerals that they've invested in getting. They're trying to do away with the issue of theft and other issues. And then when it comes to the issue of sticking with the employer, to try to safeguard their investment. At the same time, they're trying to make extra profits. Then, when it comes to the issue of the employees too are underpaid, and they are taking a lot of risk in going into these mining holes, trying to extract minerals and all the other things that they need to be able to get, and they're being underpaid. It sends some level of threat to their existence as in livelihood as a people. Like, I cannot work on the mine, and I realize like I'm taking out extracting minerals every time for my employer, and I'm not being fairly compensated. So at the end of the day, there's a conflict here that is not being addressed. And if we look at the conflict that's not being addressed, it's actually being fueled by corruption. Because at the end of the day, the people who are in charge of labor and compensation for the ordinary citizens are not doing their jobs. They are basically being compromised. And as they're being compromised, they're turning blind eye towards the issue of how these people are being treated. So you see, so you see, it's a very serious issue. It's a serious issue, and mining has to be something that every government of Liberia take very seriously, because they have to understand this is main source of wealth generation for our country. So our people should benefit and not suffer from it.
Definitely. So who has the mining rights on the land? Because in the rest of our countries, the land's just been taken and never given back, or people have been slowly pushed off. But in Liberia, you have a different case scenario, because everyone was given land very recently when it was settled in the 1800s. So do you all have your own land there and public areas? Because your government works differently as well to how ours would work with sharing of resources and that.
Okay, so I have a little knowledge in terms of actual land ownership, but this is what I know in terms of my experience and what I have come across. In Liberia so far, if you purchase a land you are given a land deed. The land is surveyed. You're given a land deed, and it's turned over to you as the rightful owner of that land. Basically, that has been a historical transaction in our country. As the settlers came, they purchased the land from the indigenous, and then they were given land deeds and other stuff. So that has been a historical transaction for us. However, when it comes to the issue of land in rural areas, there's some lands that the government has control over, like 100% rights over. Those lands are public lands. And then there are some lands that the rural communities have control over, and those lands they're being compensated for. They're supposed to be compensated for it, because it's in the law that if for any reason a mining company comes into this particular community and they have realized that there are minerals that they want to extract from here, there has to be some compensation given to the locals. It has to be maybe placed in the form of some developmental project. It has to be given like maybe annual support to their county budget, and those different things that has to be done. So that's how it goes so far in terms of what is to be done when it comes to land ownership. and benefits. So that's what I would say. But I'm not an expert on the issue of land and land authority and land other issues. But so far, that's what I know. That's what I have come across. That's what I've read about and I've seen so far.
Yeah, thank you so much, Levi. Of course, we keep on learning from one another and we keep on researching. We learn a lot about our countries, which we hitherto don't know. Now, asking you a little bit about the regions, I do understand that when the Liberians, or when the people came from the US to Liberia, they came with their own version of Christianity. And which church is the predominant church in Liberia, if I may ask? Since you call your country Christian nation, are they Roman Catholic? Are they Protestants? Are they the born again version?
Okay, so Liberia has a history that was built on the Baptist principles, because our Declaration of Independence was also signed in the First Baptist Church in the city of Monrovia. So a good number of the people there are Christians. Like a huge number of our population is a Christian-based faith. Then next come the Muslims. So when it comes to Christianity, the denominations that we have in majority are like the Baptists and the Roman Catholic Church. You have the Methodists, you have the Episcopalians, the Pentecostals are like the second most, but it has some level of ethnicity to it. When it settled the scheme, their own form of worship was basically around Baptist, Methodist, and Catholic, and yeah, Episcopalian. As people started to adapt religion, as the indigenous started to adapt religion, most of them went more to the Pentecostal side. So those people are like the ones who actually mostly believe in the praise and worship and kind. But now it has, like again, I had said, there has been intermarriages, there has been migration from one place to the other. So there has been some great level of infusion in terms of the different denominations that we have. So it's no longer based on that level of ethnicity that it had in early 1800s. So now it's quite more different. Everyone is worshiping everywhere. There's no more discrimination. No matter where you come from, you worship in which church you please to worship in. That's it. For Muslim, it remains the same. You can worship as a Muslim in any mosque that you find close to you. There's no discrimination to that. And yes, for us who don't want to go to church anymore and don't believe in it, we just enjoy the rest of the social and cultural benefits that we can.
No, getting up early in the morning and getting dressed and going and sitting in church. I mean, that I remember as a child. You do so much more with your Sundays and with your days than you do sitting in church listening to the same old stuff, isn't it? You get to sleep in a bit, you get to go out and do stuff in your garden or whatever. It's really great. And it's family time as well.
Yes, I love the fact there's this one thing of religion that if it was taught in a different form could have benefited all of humanity, was the form that if you have faith in something or in a person or whatever it is, just respect the next person who does it.
Exactly.
That's the best we can do.
It's so true. I always say to people, it's like supporting your favorite football team. So I might support Liverpool and you support Chelsea. That's great. We can still all get together and watch the game and cheer for our teams. But I'm not going to wear your team's colours. And if you come to my house, you're going to see Liverpool in my house, colours or whatever. Likewise, I'll go to your house and see who you guys are all, Man U or Chelsea. I'm not going to tell you to take your colours off, or, you know, we need to get to a stage where we can see religion like that. It's something that you can go crazy in your own homes with all your memorabilia and whatever, but when you're together, you both respect. You're on different teams. And it's like I always say, you respect the person, not the religion. I don't respect religion, but it doesn't mean it does not mean that you disrespect the person. That's the big thing. And I think especially for us as humanists, it's so important that's why I drifted away from the atheist community, because I just couldn't handle it anymore, because I found that atheists were I don't know if it was just the groups that I was on, they were always fighting. They were jumping all over the walls of Facebook walls of religious people and slamming them. And if anybody happened to put a religious post on their wall, they'd be swearing at them almost. And like when we had the whole COVID thing, they'd be going at the Christians about how you can be not vaccinating that. And it became like a Facebook war. And I just thought to myself, I can't handle this. I'm not the kind of person that fights in my everyday life. I'll never go in and like complain about bad service or be rude to people. And I was now seeing it in the atheist groups, and I thought, no, this is not me. And I also know that politically there's some atheists who are like, they'll pick up arms and go and kill if they had to. And I thought, that doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't mean that, regardless, that it means you could be like that. So then I drifted towards, and it's what I identify with now, because it connects you with like-minded people. And the humanist groups are so much calmer. And it really is, it's like I say, all humanists are atheists by default, because we don't believe in a God, but not all atheists are humanists.
Yeah.
Because it's the same. It's like I say, good and bad in every religion, race, tribe, country, gender. We've just got to find the good people, because it couldn't be so angry all the time. Angry atheists, filled with anger. It's such a waste of energy when you can rather be on the groups where you are motivated and you're speaking to nice people and you're doing productive things and you're helping people and learning. So
that's right, Lynda. That's very right, Lynda. Now, going towards elections in Liberia, I've been following a bit of report, reading about the opposition in Liberia, and of course, they were accusing your president, George Weah, being accused of corruption, nepotism, and all that. I'd like to know, how free are political position in Liberia? How free is it?
There has been a practice of freedom of expression in Liberia. One thing I can give credit to the Liberian people for is the fact that we have a new definition of disagreement. And that definition of disagreement comes with the exchanges of words. You have the right to tell anybody how you feel, even if they think that you are right or wrong. They have to accept that that's your right to say what you want, and you're entitled to it. And all of this comes to the fact that we have signed different peace accords, and we have also agreed that there will be no more war in that country. And there has also been an agreement that there has to be some level of freedom of expression, that each person can say what they want. So when it comes to the issue of opposition, it's a political thing. So I would never think like there's going to be 100% fair ground for an opposition and incumbent to have equal quarrel over political issues, because the incumbents always think like they have this thing of defending their position. So they will want to do anything to either intimidate the opposition to say this or that, or sometimes drag you in a different direction. And the opposition will also have the right to say what they want to say, because they believe that they can do it better than you. So they're saying it in a way that the public has to see you in a different form or manner. But when it comes to the issue of freedom of expression, I tell you for sure, like nobody in Liberia dare bring instability to the country because somebody told you that you are corrupt and you're doing some form of nepotism. And especially if the person has proof and they're making these allegations and they're proving them and they're giving instances and they're stating facts and they're calling you out on a regular basis, that means you have to be able to either change your ways and try to make some level of improvement. So oppositions have been very vocal when it comes to mismanagement of public funds, when it comes to mismanagement of power. They have been free to express themselves. There have been a couple of public demonstration in Liberia, where the legislature has been held still, and that has been like a very good gain for Liberia, for us to experience these huge demonstrations of public cry against corruption and mismanagement, and there has been no war that lead to that. Because we know in the past, in the 80s, if such demonstration came up, the government will have put soldiers in the street and they will beat up everybody, and then at the end of the
That's
day, it
exactly.
became a conflict. Yeah, but now we have a Liberia where if opposition want to demonstrate or they want to call up for a parade or something against some mismanagement, so all they need to do is to make their request to the Ministry of Justice, to the police, and seek permits and get to the street on the due day that they want to do it, and they do the demonstration and be heard peacefully. After that, they go
Wow.
back. They all go back to their very homes. And if it is not addressed, the opposition has the right again to reassemble on another day. So that has been a great gain for Liberia so far.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's
I'm really
amazing.
proud to be a Liberian in Africa for how much I know there can be some level of instability when it comes to political issues of craft for corruption. There's still
Jeez.
corruption. There's a huge practice of corruption and mismanagement of funds and human rights abuses. But the issue of freedom of speech is there not to be taken away from anybody, any Liberian. You have the right to say what you want to say.
I do agree with you, and
So,
I'm happy and proud of Liberia. I follow your president's page. He has a page, a Facebook page, which I follow. And about 3 months ago, he wrote about 10 pages responding to the head of the opposition, defending himself against corruption allegations.
wow.
I found a very smart way of a politician responding to a politician. I found very mature of where responding to his opponent in the opposition in writing, point by point, explaining all the details. I
It's
follow where
mature.
is a
It's a
page,
mature way of
and that
doing
is
it.
mature politics, which I want to commend the people of Liberia upon achieving that. Because in Uganda, in my country, my president cannot respond to you in that way. They will arrest you
You'll send a
instead.
drone and you'll be
They
taken
will
and never seen again.
arrest you, they will beat you up, they
Yeah.
will conjure cases against you. And that
Koto,
is not the
you know,
case for Liberia. And I'm happy with Liberia.
what's amazing. You know what's more amazing about that you've seen on the president's page. The level of freedom of expression that we have in Liberia can be seen on the president's page when you go there and you see people who are not for his government or not for the things that you're doing. They freely express themselves on
And he
that
responds
page
to them. And he
with
responds to
their
them.
names. Yes, with their
Wow.
names on it.
Yeah.
With their names on it. They're not in hiding. They tell the
Yeah.
president exactly how they feel.
Mm.
So
We could never do
that
that here.
that for any reason I can put my hand up and say I'm proud to be a Liberian with that level of freedom of expression that we have so
Wow.
far. We've made a lot of gains because I've seen how it is in other African countries, and it is not like
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
I
that's what I
think
was
that
saying.
you're the only country like that. Each country's got so much to offer. Like Uganda's got the humanism schools. We've got so many different things that we can learn from each other, how things are working for you. I mean, not just Africa, but I don't think there's many countries in the Western world where the politicians can actually, or you can openly write to your president and say, I don't like the fact, why are you doing this, or what's this, and you get a response. And that really is, it's the mature way to do it,
It's a
because
mature way.
it's making
If you
differences
don't
with
change,
words.
if you don't change, we're going to wait for elections. If people cry upon your name and you don't change, we're just going to wait for elections. Elections is coming in October. If the Liberian people still need President Weah, they're going to put him back. If they don't need him, they're going to take him out. And the next person come, we're going to express ourselves to you the same way we did with Charles Weah. It's you. We're not afraid of you. We give you power. We have to be able to express ourselves.
We elect our presidents. They work for us. This is what we get wrong here. We don't work for them. They work for us. If there is corruption, if public funding is being abused, and there's people going missing, and there's terrible human rights, you get rid of your president and you vote someone better, and that's the way it should work. And that's exactly. And they know it. Your presidents know he better do his 10-page response. You're saying that he's not corrupt and explaining what the misunderstandings are, because if he doesn't, he's got to account to the people. If he can't, if he's not to speed, and he's out and someone else is in, because you want a peaceful country. You want to maintain what you've built up so far. You certainly don't want someone new coming in that's going to upset that whole apple cart for you.
Yes.
Sure.
And as we wrap up, we have 4 minutes to go. Of course,
4 minutes.
I've just said
It's been a fascinating show.
it was a very fascinating talk indeed. Of course, I have to give you kudos, as I just said, because in Africa, it's very rare to find a president who responds to his critics line by line, point by point. And I give it to George Weah. I follow his page. I see how he responds to people, how people talk with him without hiding their names. They blame him, and he responds to me. This is the way to go for Africa. Lynda, as we wind down, as we conclude this show for today, what's the way forward for you? And what's the last
Well, this is probably why we don't hear much about Liberia, because they seem to be getting that. I think what really strikes me with Levi, which I also we don't see, is that he's genuinely passionate about his country and proud of his country, which you don't often see in our youth today, because everybody is just so beaten down because of the oppression. So that is a testament to the Liberian people as well, where he's really like, and I think the wonderful thing, and it's something we've all got to learn, is that you've got to tolerate people that are different to you. Like in Liberia, they can have open discussions about things, agree to disagree, but it doesn't end up in hatred, or, like Levi said, you go home afterwards and you do your own thing. It's really something that we're all adults, and half the time I'm also to blame. We act like kids on the playground sometimes, don't we? Mudslinging and everything. And we get so embroiled in that we sometimes lose sight of the bigger picture. So I think that's so great. And I know Liberia is such an amazing country with all the wildlife and the marine life and the scenery and the bird life. It's such a beautiful country. So it's really nice to know that there is at least a country here in Africa where people are really proud of what they've achieved. And they've overcome so many differences from the beginning, so it gives me hope for the whole of Africa, that if we change the way we do things, we can get different results from the ones we have at the moment that we're all unhappy with.
Thank you, Lynda. Thank you so much, Lynda. Now, Levi, as we conclude, and sorry if I pronounce your name differently, because maybe not the American way of saying it. My apologies in advance. Now, as we conclude, I want to promise you that we are going to bring you back on this set.
Definitely.
And talk about humanism in Liberia and many other things. But as we conclude, what are the key issues you would like to conclude with today?
As we conclude, first of all, I want to say the issue of human rights in Africa has to be taken seriously. I know there has to be a new wave, and there will be a new wave of how minority groups are being treated. It might not work with this current generation, but I believe there's a hope somewhere that is boiling and is going to sprout in the future, where people can live together and live peacefully, because we all deserve whatever it is that we are brought here for, this life we're given. We have to
Sure.
contribute no matter who you are. That's one thing I want to say to all Africans. We have to see people as who they are, and we have to accept them, except where those people are causing harm to you as a person, or they're causing harm to the larger society in a way that we need to be able to take them to justice, not to take the laws in our hand, but to justice. There has to be more moderate laws passed against people of minority groups. Um, our largely heterosexual continent is a continent that is at a pace where they're very slow to get this concept of us living together in harmony. It's all about patriarchy. It's all about heterosexual activities. That's for the larger portion of Africa. When it comes to Liberia, I hope to see this nation that is going to be once again the bacon of Africa, is going to be a leader in human rights issue, is going to be a leader in the issue of development. We are a very small nation of approximately 5 million people, with a lot of resources. I believe that we have to be able to do something very important, very fast, and very general for the larger population of Liberia to benefit, and not just a few people. And then when it comes to the humanist movement of Africa, I want to say it's basically a movement that is in a very young stage, but
Mm.
we're going to get there. We're going to make sure that we win this battle of humanity, to be able to bring people
Absolutely.
together, to have a lot of rational thinking, and to be able to move in direction of science and evidence-based decisions.
Whoa, that's awesome. Awesome words of
It's wonderful.
encouragement,
That really is.
words
That's
of
so nice.
wisdom, and words of hope. And it's you, Lynda, to conclude this show. Thank you so much, Levi, and looking forward to having you next time. Back to you, to Lynda. Back to you, Lynda, to
Yes,
Thank
conclude the
you.
thank you,
show.
Levi. It's just been so great. I know we've been trying to get you on the show for so long, and I think our topics went off a bit but today, but it was just so fascinating. So we'd normally invite you back next week, but Kato and I are talking next week on an American show where we're going to be talking about what's happening in Uganda and getting the word out there. We'll be streaming here instead, and in the following week we also have time props, but we'll definitely get you back because you're also spending time in Rwanda now, and we don't hear much about what's going on there. So we'd love to connect with Rwanda as well. Thank you
I
so much. It's been so wonderful learning about your country and your people. I hope to visit one day. I'd love to.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks so
Thank you so
much.
much,
Hey,
Levi,
bye.
and bye bye, everyone. Thank you
Bye.
for watching. Bye bye.